Okay, so good morning to you and your listeners and viewers everywhere. I know this is the most listened program around this time of the day, so thank you for having me. And every opportunity we get to speak to the public, we'll take it. What I'm here to speak about is Act Number 7 of 2018, and you're very right, it's a very recent act. It has to do with the registration of regulated entities. The background of this is that by way of the FATF 40 recommendations, one of the first recommendations speaks to the issue of countries having an understanding of their money laundering and terrorist financing risk in country. So we're actually in the process now of completing our national risk assessment as we speak. We have officials from the World Bank at the National Stadium who are now assisting us to tidy up our national risk assessment. So at the end of that, we have an opportunity to determine the different level of risk with respect to institutions and products in institutions and also groups of entities. Right? What that allows, it allows us to now be able to dedicate our resources in a wise manner for the issues that are spoken of as a high level risk or medium level risk. All right, we don't have resources to treat with every single issue, but what the global standard is that we take a risk based approach. So that's a bit of background. Now, the Act really speaks to the registration of entities, and what we are attempting to do is first of all know who are the entities we are supposed to regulate and supervise. All right, in terms of numbers, who are they? What is the type of business they conduct, and to what magnitude they conduct those type of businesses. Also, we'd want to know the persons who are involved in those type of businesses, whether it be those that are directors, owners, or beneficial owners. Now, this is not necessarily, although it's a global standard and it's mentioned as part of the 40 recommendations, every country needs to be responsible. And so to properly treat with money laundering, terrorist financing, and the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, which is an international standard, every country must know what they are truly dealing with. And you can only do so by engaging the various institutions and collecting pertinent data so that you can analyze to determine the different level of risk. So what this Act seeks to do is to ask all regulated entities to get registered with the Anti-Money Laundering Commission. Now, what is a regulated entity? The guidelines, the Procedures of Crime 2012 guideline, defines a regulated entity as an entity that is engaged in what we call relevant business. And relevant business includes business under the Banking Act, the Insurance Act. It speaks to a person engaged in real estate business. It speaks to a person engaged in the accounting business. It also speaks to, of course, banks, and it also speaks to non-profit organizations. So I know there's a tendency to think that this legislation speaks to churches. This legislation doesn't speak to churches. It speaks to non-profit organizations. And, of course, the church belongs to that group by the way they are incorporated or based on the style of operations they conduct. No,
So before you go further, it means that all churches, for instance, let's look at some of the larger denominations,
Right.
and there's no larger denomination than the Catholic Church,
Yes.
the Anglican Church, Methodist Church, Seventh-day Adventists, and so on. They are all they all have to be registered,
Yes, they do.
and they are registered as non-profit organizations.
Non-profit organizations.
So as such, they fall under this act.
Exactly.
Okay.
True, right.
But not just churches. If you have a mosque in
Right.
Grenada,
So
it has to be
not
registered in the
church.
same way.
You have Girl Guides, you have the Lions Club, you have the Leo Club. All you have organizations like Grand Coda and Grand Save. All these organizations are viewed as non-profit organizations. No,
But they do receive money, just not for profit.
Right. Not
okay.
for profit. The thing is, if you take a global look a bit, you recognize that these standards were developed to treat with various levels of risk and to treat with what has been happening in the world on a global front. And you'd also know that a number of non-profit organizations, so-called non-profit organizations, not necessarily in Grenada, were used for terrorist financing, to funnel money to terrorist organizations, were used as massive money laundering schemes. So based on the trends, the global trends, that influences global standards. And the 40 recommendations, the FATF 40 recommendations, were created and put together in 1989 to address these issues and to give various jurisdictions a sort of template as to how to pattern their own local anti-money laundering regime. So if you look at our plethora of legislation, for example, whether it be the Procedures of Crime or the guidelines or other parts of legislation, they all speak to fighting money laundering and terrorist financing, but it also mirrors the particulars of the FATF 40 recommendations. You see, we cannot function isolatedly. We must function based on the global standards and the global expectations, because it's on these expectations our reputation stands or sits. Mm-hmm. And because this international organization, standard organization, have the capacity to list countries on the various lists, it therefore means that we have to pay particular attention and not necessarily copy what they do, but whatever we do must be in sync with these global standards. So the new act we're speaking about, Act number 7 of 2018, is not necessarily spoken to by the international standard, but it allows countries to determine their own indigenous ways in which to follow these standards.
Well, some folks who are listening right now, for instance, church leaders who may be listening right now, some of them may be a bit spooked right now. They say, oh, well, that means I have to go and pay a set of money right now. What sort of fees are we talking about, and what is the process for a non-profit organization, for instance? We know it also includes the credit unions, large and small, and the NGOs and so on, banks as well, everybody. Car dealers, which is a funny one. I realize that the RGPF have been having meetings with car dealers, but we'll come back to that one. Okay. But what is the process for an NPO right now, a church organization also, that wants to get registered? They have to go and pay $20,000, $30,000, $500,000. How much they have to pay?
Very far from that. Just before I get to the fees, it is important to say that you register based on your incorporation. So if you're dealing with a particular church that has a headquarters but has branches all over, the registration is not required for every branch. Let me get that straight. It's one.
You have to pay for each one.
No. It's one registration.
So don't frighten all. Don't frighten.
So, but if you're an independent church, for example, and you're incorporated independently, then you ought to register. But for example, take the Anglican Church or the Catholic Church or the Adventist Church, one registration each. They don't have to register for every local church.
Okay.
Just one. And let me tell you this: when we had the discussion on this piece of legislation, the issue of the fees came up, and we felt we did not want the fees to be an hindrance of how long the law takes to be passed and how the public embraces it. So the fees are minuscule. For a non-profit organization, it's only $100 for every year's registration. $100.
Well, $100, but then after they pay that and they register for the 1 year, they can get 100% concession as as an NGO, yes, but also as a church. They usually get concessions on vehicles, and so that costs thousands of dollars. So $100 is minuscule.
So basically, the powers that be absorbs the responsibility in terms of resources. So, for example, even the registration process is more costly than $100. I mean, you have to use a form, download a form. You have to fill it in. You have to bring it in. The staff have to look at it. You have a 30-day period with which the information will be vetted, just to make sure that information there is correct in terms of your physical location and the persons that are involved. And after that 30-day period, then you would be informed and you would receive that registration, that certificate of registration. I mean, the fees go as high as $500 for the largest credit unions, and $300 for smaller credit unions. So the fees are really it's not an issue that we discuss at all, because it's minuscule in terms of the fees cannot pay for the process. All right? It's really basic. And it's a 12-month registration, so every 12 months you register. And somebody might ask why. But you see, because what the international standard and our local standard is that we have to have a system for continuous monitoring of risk levels. So if you go beyond 12 months, then you miss it by a mile, right? Things can change. So, for example, on the registration process, you capture beneficial ownership. And I know that's a conversation we need to come back to have all by itself. A beneficial owner is not the person who necessarily owns the account of the business, but who is in a position to give instruction on how the business must be administered. All right. So every organization, whether non-profit or not, is considered to have a beneficial owner. Right. But we are speaking about the process. So if you're internet savvy, you go up on www.amlcommission.gd. That's a website of the Anti-Money Laundering Commission. So www.amlcommission.gd. The office is located at the National Stadium on the Dabo side, the third floor, right? So you can just walk in at any time between 8 and 4. But if you go up on that website, there's a place where you can either register online or download the form and do it manually. You'd have to go into the office, of course, drop in that form, pay the fee, and you have a 30-day period in which the information will be vetted, and then everything should be all right from going forward. Let me just make this point, Sheldon, that we want this piece of legislation to be embraced in a positive way. Because what we are attempting to do is to ensure that entities remain on the right path. And I think everybody would want to know that they are part of a wider financial landscape and it is safe, right? Whether it's for reputation or not. So you don't want an international examiner to come in or a mutual evaluation examiner to come in and ask what are the procedures or the mechanism to monitor NPOs, and you say you have none. That would be a huge embarrassment for our country. So what we are attempting to do is to be in a position to say, look, we are aware of the situation, and because of that, we take a risk-based approach and we view this particular group as low risk. And so we would not expend as much resources on that group as we would on another group. So that's what this is about.
So can we just say we're not doing it and refuse to do it? Let them put us on as much list as they want to do. We're not going to ask churches to pay $100. What would be the consequences to Grenada?
Well, Sheldon, look, I mean, you only have to remember not too long ago when Transparency International placed us on a list how much damage that can do. So let me just give a little bit a quick information. Now, in 2020, that's the second quarter of 2020, June, for example, Grenada would be undertaking its mutual evaluation by the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force. It's a peer review where a group comes in, look at your system, speak to people, not just look at your technical compliance, not legislatively, but also look at your effectiveness to see whether or not the laws are actually working. So, for example, this one, if we say that we have a legislation that monitors NPOs and we cannot say how we're doing it, then that's a failing grade one time. At the end of that process, that is in June of 2020, that report will be compiled and you'll be rated based on your level of competency in the various areas and your effectiveness. Now, if you get a bad report, you can be placed on a public statement can be made of you on the Financial Action Task Force website. And I can tell you that there are countries in the Caribbean right now, after that public statement, they lost corresponding banking relationship. And they're still fighting to get it back.
I think, okay, the average man out there, one of our bus drivers, one of our citizens on the bus, the farmer who is in his garden right now and making sure that he gets some watermelon for Sheldon and us right now, right? He's listening. Right. He understands what you mean by corresponding banking. I know. Explain to him what you mean by you'd be losing by that. Right. Corresponding banking.
So, for example, you're a member of a bank in Grenada or a credit union in Grenada. If you do not have a bank position in either the US or Europe, you will not be able to send money beyond Grenada. So if you want to wire transfer money, for example, to somebody in China, you need a mid bank. You need a bank in the middle to do that work for you. Grenada doesn't have the capability to send monies from Grenada to China without going through a corresponding bank. So if you lose corresponding banking relationship, it means that you have no middleman, and therefore you're virtually out of business. Because no bank can function outside of having global connectivity.
So it means that your credit card in Grenada would be useless.
Well, it's just a piece of plastic.
You could use it in Grenada, but you can't use it anywhere else.
Just a piece of plastic.
It means that your family member who is working in Brooklyn right now, driving taxi like Wade, and they want to send that money down to the bank in Grenada, they can't do that.
They can't do that. They can't do that.
And they can't put the cash in the pocket and walk down either,
and
because that's illegal as well.
And in addition to becoming the risk of losing corresponding bank relation, when you have a public statement put on you with major deficiencies, investors look at that to test the temperature in the country, to test the proficiency of the legislation and the institutions. So you that interferes with because as a matter of fact, what the public statement does, a negative public statement says to the world that you should take precaution when dealing with Grenada. They don't say nothing, but you take precaution. You have to be careful because Grenada is not doing enough to with respect to the global standards to fight money laundering and terrorist financing.
And then the business people who want to do business here, it's a problem for them, because how do they get their money into Grenada? And then when they make their money, and if they make a little profit and they want to take money out of Grenada, how do they take their money out of Grenada without the corresponding banking?
Well, without
so
that,
it's with that, they just, well, why should I go through that? I'm not going to operate with that.
So it's important that you brought it up. So it's just important that every person who is considered to be a regulated entity or doing relevant business should see this as them plugging in some positivity into the life of the financial landscape of Grenada. I don't know how else to put it, but it's extremely important that we come together so that you recognize that in 2009 we had a mutual evaluation that really focused on laws and technical compliance. And it took us several years with a lot of work to get back in good state. A lot of legislation were passed, a lot of systems were put in place. I think Grenada is in a much better position. I mean, you only look around and see what's happening. A lot of work has been put into it. And we just want to now consolidate the work we've done over the years and to put us on the right path.
One or two of the church leaders and so on misunderstood aspects of the legislation and were thinking that they had to pay as much as I heard one talking about $300 and something dollars. How did they get, I mean, the legislation, and I've seen the legislation says $100 for NPOs.
Right.
How could somebody find themselves end up having to spend $300 as a church or so to get registered?
Well, the thing is now, they use somebody to do it for them. You don't
so
need
they get charged.
Right. So you don't need that at all. You can call 444-3828, 444-3828,
444-3828, right?
Right? And once you call that number, they will guide you. So just looking at the fees, insurance companies that have assets over 25 million pays $500 for registration. Less than 25 million, $300, right? Large credit unions considered to having assets of 50 million and over pays $500. Under 50 million, $300. I mean, this thing is really minuscule, and down to people involved in precious metals and stones and car dealers and NPOs, there's only a $100 registration fee.
How has compliance been thus far? As I mentioned earlier, and I said we'd get back to it, car dealers.
Right.
The car boat was here up till this weekend. I saw the car boat dropping off a pile of cars down. I know which part they're putting them, but a set of cars again. And outside of that, every now and again we see a bulldozer clear a piece of land, we see a fence go up, and you realize somebody else is dealing in automobiles.
Right.
How has compliance been going with the different areas, and in specific people like car dealers, those dealing in precious stones and so?
So it's a group that's obviously very forward. They're growing quite a bit, and because of that, because of Grenada understanding the landscape, the financial landscape, Grenada has included the car dealers as part of the regulatory entity grouping. So it's not a priority group on the international landscape, but of course you have to understand your own scenario. But what we have been doing is trying to engage them. You see, when things are new, just as this act, it takes a bit of time. So we've been using a softer approach to try to get people to come in and to get an understanding of what that does. Because if you do business as a car dealer, for example, you're not a bank. You need a bank to do your business. If you're not in the right state, you'll have problems at the bank. It's already happening. The bank is asking now, what is your understanding of money laundering? What is your understanding of terrorist financing? Do you have a system in place? Have you been registered? These questions would continue to get a little bit louder. So persons who are part of that landscape must ensure that they get on board, right? And it's all about making your money and your transactions safer.
Okay. You've been speaking about the money and the transaction. What are some of the, and there's a question I want to come, because the morning is pregnant with questions this morning, and
I
9 months reach and they call the ambulance. So there's a lot of questions coming up here. But still on the proceeds of crime, because since we have FIU in, we're going to ask some other questions too, not just proceeds of crime act.
Yeah, no problem.
What are some of the fines that persons can find themselves facing? Obviously, it's a law. It lays out the registration fee. And so if they don't do that, what are some of the things that they're facing? A car dealer, or possibly a NGO or a church or so, or the credit unions.
But
if they don't pay, what are they facing?
Shouldn't permit me, I hate to talk about fines. What I would look at a deeper level, how it can erode your ability to do business. That is much more destructive than a fine. So if you are not ready to register, if you are not ready to come on board, what you'll find it difficult to do business generally. Because I tell you what, let's take an example. You have a local bank. That bank must ensure that whoever they engage in any transaction, whether a one-off or have a relationship with, that person is following certain guidelines, because they have to also look at the risk levels. So our law says that every regulated entity must do an internal risk assessment to determine which of the products are high, medium, or low level risk, which of their customers are high level or low level risk. So it's a continuous process. And so in order to understand the risk that a customer inputs to your institution, you must know the customer's business. And know it's not just the source of funds, but the source of wealth. It goes beyond the source of funds. So even if you can say, well, these funds came from a SUSU, the bank would also ask, well, where did the funds come to pay SUSU? The questions end. Right? So I think it's important that we say that you would get to have some more questions from the finance institution. It's not their fault. It's actually part of that global tightening that Grenada has to follow, that we should follow to ensure that our system remains safe. So there are more questions, and we may have to bring in more documentation and so on. But it's all part of keeping what you do in a safe way.
Why Grenada, though? Are we seeing instances of terrorist financing, money laundering in the Caribbean region? Have we seen anything recently along those lines, terrorist financing, for instance?
Okay. Well, I mean, not too far from us, there's a bit of terrorist issues. Persons who went to battle and come back and so on. So not just our neighbor. In Grenada context, thank God we have not seen any terrorist financing. We can point out any situation or incidents of that. But money laundering certainly, because once you have a crime that produces any sort of value or worth, right, and you do anything with that value or worth, then you actually committed money laundering. So there's a number of persons over the years who have been charged for money laundering successfully. So remember, if you commit, say, a fraud, for example, and you've got money, let's suppose you do something simple as you forge a check and you catch a check and you get $1,000. That, and the fact that you're holding that $1,000, you're committing the offense of money laundering. If you do anything, if you give somebody your transfer, if you send it, you use Western Union to send it out, that means you transfer monies, that's also money laundering. So you see why now Western Union and MoneyGram have to be extremely careful and have to ask all these questions to ensure that the money they're transferring is not part of the proceeds of crime.
Well, and I was coming to that one next when you're speaking about the questions, because even up to last night, I was responding to some persons on social media who are seriously concerned about some of the questions. They're finding questions that they are being asked now at MoneyGram and Western Union to be severely intrusive of their financial standing and the financial business. In other words, they find the people to mako. To ask them some of the questions in our local parlance. And I was trying to explain to them, no, it's a situation that there are laws that are in place in relation to terrorist financing, money laundering, and these prescribe certain questions that to safeguard MoneyGram and to safeguard Western Union they're asking. Could you go a bit more into this for us, please?
Yeah, sure. No, you see, also I understand that MoneyGram and Western Union are part of a global grouping. And they have a serious obligation internationally. People must understand that if one of these entities make an error in terms of money transfer not following guidelines, they are heavily fined. We don't hear about it, but they are heavily fined for errors. And you're talking about people can be put out of business based on the fines you get. It has not gotten to that yet in our country, but there's always the potential out there. So these institutions have no choice but to follow not just the local guidelines, but they also have to meet international expectations. So Noah, as I was saying in the beginning, once upon a time it used to be just the source of funds, but now it's the source of wealth. So you based on the amount of money you try to send, they would ask you additional questions. And that it just has become very normal. You see, if you're not a regular with one of the institutions, you may find it intrusive. But if you're a regular, you would now know that it's beyond the normal. They have to ask questions. And for example, let's suppose you go into one of the institutions and they ask what is your occupation, and you say your occupation is you're the head of the police force, or the head of the FIU, or you're a minister this or minister that. Immediately, the idea is that you form part of a higher level risk group, and so more questions will be asked. Because remember, we're speaking risk-based. We're speaking about the kind of customers and the kind of products, and based on who you are as a customer, you will be asked much more questions than if you're an ordinary person. It's just that's just how it goes, and these are the expectations when it comes to money transfer and doing transaction on a whole.
And additionally, some of the individuals who are coming in to see if Grenada is complying, they might pretty well go by MoneyGram and try to send some money to see what questions are asked, to see if Grenada is really seriously complying, if what you all are telling them is the truth.
Well,
they might do
I'm
that
not
as
sure
well.
they're good at that far, but there is no limit as to what they can do. But what I know for sure, they go far and wide and they speak to persons, employees, my ordinary employees. They look at portfolios and books, and maybe look at some transactions that are on the IT platform to draw certain conclusions. And you can lie for them. I mean, they will pick up a pattern here and there and determine the kind of compliance that you're following. It's not something you could hide or lie about or fix in one day, because the footprints remain. And understanding that we based on where we are now, Grenada, we can't deal with bad reputation. You know?
Yeah, because right now we're in the good books. We don't want to end up in the others.
Very good books. As we on the whole question of transferring money and so, Super, what is the stipulated amount? What is the most amount of money you can transfer, right, from these institutions, MoneyGram and Western Union? How much?
So it's actually left up to them. I think there's a 5,000 US limit, but don't quote me on it, because they determine how much money they want to move, and how often you can move it and so on. But what I can tell you is, if you go trying to, normally people they create a bad impression. They have a certain amount of money to send legitimately. They try to break it up and send it over a period of days. No, that looks suspicious. It's best you go and find out the largest amount you could send and you do that transfer. But if you want to send $6,000 and you break it up into $2,000 groupings and you go over 3 days, anybody will believe that you're up to something, that you're trying to hide something. It looks as what we call smurfing or structuring. It looks that way. So better you go to the business and just have a discussion and determine what you do. So some people want to do a deposit. There is this inherent belief that the institution could ask you the source of 10,000 US. So they try to deposit 9,000 US, and the next they try to deposit 1,000 US. That just is so obvious, right? So it's all good intention. I know. Listen, Sheldon, most people are good people, right? In my business, I find that out. Most people are good people, but they because of what they think is happening in the system, they do funny things and make themselves look suspicious. There is no need to do that. You go in, you have a conversation. If it's legitimate, you just say where it came from. And if you have a relationship with your institution and not one-off, they would know. I mean, everybody will know maybe what my bank account would be, what yours would be, and so on. They have an expectation. If you go outside of the flow, then you expect to be asked certain questions. So, for example, you're depositing $1,000 a month from your business every month for the last 5 years, and all of a sudden you deposit $5,000. Well, even my kid should ask you where you got that from.
Extra.
They would ask.
Yeah.
And you say, well, no, I didn't tell you, but I did some additional imports, and that is where the profit come from. The bank said, no problem, just bring the importation documentation. And that stays right there. But people say, I'm not telling you. They're trying to withdraw their money to go to another bank. Well, the problem just begin. Because you have, so what we need to do is to continue to educate the general public and continue to ask people to engage the institution. Aspects of fighting money laundering should become commonplace. Just so we know about the quick loans and getting monies fast and sending monies fast, that should be embedded into the psyche of the citizens. That if I'm going to send money, these institutions, they have a responsibility. I have to share with them information to ensure that they function with somebody who is safe. Because let me tell you, just one transaction going to a terrorist organization being facilitated by an institution in Grenada is havoc. It might look small, but just one would change every single thing.
For instance, all of a sudden they realize some money has gone to ISIS and it's funneled through a bank here in Grenada.
Everything changes.
And it ends up in Libya, or Syria, or some other country in problems.
Right. So, you see, the bank would know who would do what. So the system is for everybody. So you're really bona fide, you're doing good business for years with the bank, all of a sudden they're asking you questions. It's actually to keep you, the institution, the money and the reputation safe.
And the country.
Well, ultimately.
Overall. Superintendent, moving slightly off from the proceeds of crime, but still dealing with proceeds of crime, there is an issue that keeps coming up nearly every single week. There's another one on social media.
Every day.
Where we're finding profiles being made in the name of prominent Grenadians, some government ministers, other persons as well. And individuals here in Grenada have been losing. Every week there are people that are still being duped into this thing. We have a population of 100,000, and they're still finding people in the 100,000 to send money. 600 US, 300 US, 200 US. Even when they go and they're being asked the questions by the wonderful folks down there at MoneyGram and Western Union, I always give you all praise. They have up notices. They ask them questions. Some people say, "I'll mind my business." They still send the money. Is the FIU aware, and is the FIU taking anything forward in relation to this particular issue? I know it's a difficult one to deal with, but is that issue on the forefront?
Well, it's been a long-standing issue with Grenada, and we have been doing quite a bit of work on it. We speak about it all the time. I think people seem to be very gullible. I mean, when I listen to the stories, they don't sound right. I mean, I test it on my sons, and I don't work with them.
No, at all.
So that you have, all of a sudden, somebody contacts you. Just recently, we had a situation where somebody contacted a young man and said, look, there's a grant. And that profile picture is one of our ministers. Well, I mean, how is that possible? Your minister comes up and say that, you have this grant, but you have to send monies out. Well, red flag one time that something is wrong. Just take up the phone now and call the relevant ministry and ask if such a grant exists. And that would end right there. People are not picking up the phone, taking out their hard-earned money and attempting to send it abroad. For what? If you give me a grant, why I have to give you money? A grant means that you don't have to pay back. Right? And if you're giving me a loan, you must be engaged in some sort of contractual arrangement. So we have a particular trend now where people are contacted and given a job, so to speak. What they're actually doing is giving the information of maybe their account. Then the perpetrators move money to that account using the internet banking platform. And then they ask them to take the money from their account and send it through one of the money remitters out. Well, I mean, that smells bad anyway. I mean, somebody asking you to use your account to receive money. I mean, how possible is that? Look, go to the bank and ask them how correct that is. All right? And you know what they get them to do? When they go to transfer the money, they get them to lie on the reasons why they're sending it out. So they even attempting to trick the persons who are engaged in remitting those monies. So what we embark on is an education drive. I mean, let me tell you, many years ago I said that the loss through these sort of schemes were in the vicinity of 7 million over the years. Now it's past 10 million. I mean, we have
that's money that left Grenada
yeah,
and
man,
gone
yeah,
out.
man. People
Over
are
$10 million.
defrauded. Yeah, or defrauded. I mean, we have two particular people who lost in excess of 1.1 million. That was sent over a year period. We had a situation where a lady sold a house right in Grenada here and sent every penny out to people who she never met in pursuit of some loan or some business. People engage in business with gold and forex market and these things don't exist. I mean, it's too good to be true. And if you're going to expend that much monies from your personal account, then hire somebody in the place not to look after your business. So you send $100,000 less and pay to an attorney to look to see if this thing is true. So even when we push back, people don't believe us. So one gentleman comments, Mr. Pierre preventing me from getting my investment. Why are you doing that? He's angry. When he sees me now, he's angry with me. And he already lost $1.3 million. And he believes he has something to get. He has absolutely nothing to get. So what we've done is we speak to the institutions to try to make it difficult. But the people are using all sorts of different innovative ways to get institutions to function. What they are actually doing is making the system harder for decent people. Because after you get burned a few times, the banks will get very strict on sending monies and receiving monies. I mean, imagine people receive a check in the mail. These days, a check in the mail is always suspect. Because you have wire transfer, you have money remitting. So any paper check in the mail should be viewed with high suspicion. People take this check, deposit it on their accounts, and before the check is cleared, remove their own money and send to people they never met. Well, let me just have news for you. You have no money to get, and you have to repay the bank. So people have to be cautious on sending their own monies. If you receive a check, let the weeks remain until the check is cleared. Never send your own money, right? And if you see a local face of a minister or some other officials in Grenada, pick up the phone and call the ministry. It's not difficult. Call Sheila and ask him if there's such a grant. And very soon, you will know that is just a scam. So that should be a joke in our country. It shouldn't be a serious matter. We could laugh about it. You see my face come up offering grants. You know that's just a joke. You don't bother with that, right? But it's not a joke. We can't use it as a joke now because people are seriously caught. We speak to about 3 or 4 persons within the last few months who was seriously defrauded, and they have no idea what to do. Well, let me tell you this. If we engage an international organization to look for $20,000, most time that's a joke too. They don't really bother with you.
And that was the follow-up question I was coming with. Is there some sort of international... Because the thing is that I realize what these guys do is they defraud some people. Yes, they might get somebody for 1.3, right. But there are a lot of people that they hold in the little 300 US, 600 right. US. And for a guy sitting behind a computer right now in Lagos, Nigeria, or in Accra, Ghana, he defrauds you of 600 US, and he defrauds 20 other people of 300, 600. He's paid for the month.
Yes.
So he doesn't mind taking the time it takes to get that 600 US from you, and as much more as he could get. If he gets that in 1 week, he could make as much as 15, 20,000 US
right.
with the amount of people that they're approaching with these things. Is there sort of any international attempt, not just at Grenada, because Grenada trying to do it, as I say, they'll laugh at you for 20,000 US or so on. But is there an international effort on among the anti-money laundering
right.
and FIUs to deal with this issue coming out mainly of Western Africa, but we have seen it as close as Jamaica as well, that there are persons in Jamaica who have been doing that. Is there any international effort on to deal with this?
The thing is, what draws global sight on any activity is whether or not people have the appetite for it or whether the amount involved makes sense. And there's always a move to collaborate and fight these other crimes, but it's not a high priority issue. So when somebody loses $600 US from Grenada, that's not something that, even if the man was involved, even at our level, to prepare a request, an official request, let's suppose it's to the US, has to go to Washington and then go to another state, right? To meet a court standard in the US to get a response as to whether or not the investigators should pursue it. Just think about that. So nobody would drop their work and take up such a case. It's just they would do some work for you, but not as much as you would want. So what we're trying to do is a preventative approach. that people don't get caught in the first place. And just think it through. If it's too good to be true, then maybe it is. Right? I mean, even if you walk from here to where I'm living, Sheldon, you won't see maybe 10 cents on the side of the road. Money don't come easy. Right? So if somebody approaches you with any free money, call the FIU. 435-2374. We will tell you if it's legit or not. If it's legit, or certainly we'll let you get it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I get calls, I get messages, I get WhatsApp every single week from people who are still, and I know that it's been existing. A lot of people don't realize it's been existing since even the 1990s. They used to do it by letters, pen pals. They send letters, they say they're in love, they send some pictures, and then they say, well, my father has to do a surgery. I want to come Grenada, but send him money for the ticket. They send him money for the ticket. Then they say, well, my father fell ill. He has to do a surgery. Could you please send the money to help me out? And you send the money and so on. And you continue sending money. I think there's an individual in Grenada here that lost somewhere around $50,000 that way.
But I mean,
I'm sending, and that was through the pen pal those days, not even internet. And now it's high tech.
So you speak of it as an old phenomenon, but it's actually happening right now. The same scenarios.
Yeah.
It's just on an internet platform, on Facebook, wherever people get in contact with you. So if you're a regular on Facebook, you get a ping, you get an offer, and the conversation begins there. I mean, somebody online 10 o'clock in the day is maybe somebody who's unemployed, and you might get a request, or we have a job offer. That's where it starts. I mean, people are gullible. So it's still very alive. Let me tell you a quick one. One guy fell in love, and the person decided to sell him a television. And maybe about a few days after, he got a call from supposedly some customs department to say, look, we have this TV coming to Grenada. We open it and we find $200,000 US in the back of it. What to do? You can either send some money to us so we just hush and let it go through, or we can just call the authorities. Well, that sounds really sweet because he didn't even expect it, right? His baby is sending him some money. So he sends the money out. And a few days again, he gets a call from and he's able to track this TV, online. The person said him a tracking to track. So you get a next call again, well, the same thing happened. And I mean, he sent quite a bit. But no TV, no money. But it's just part of the scheme. So there are different styles that people use. They play on people. For example, what you post online can send a message that maybe you're depressed. Maybe you have marital problems, or you have girlfriend problems. Well, people play on that. If you have girlfriend problems, people won't tell you, give me money for a sick relative. They will say, well, maybe I love you, and maybe we could get something going. And after a few days, well, I want to send you a gift, or you send me a gift. That's how it starts. So people wonder how. So your profile, what you put up on your WhatsApp profile, for example, you put a cry face. People say, well, that person depressed. Let me play on that, right? So I try to put up either the better half or a happy face all the time. So there is no way that you could draw conclusions. But I'm just saying your profile, all these things, you leave a footprint on the internet platform. So one lady said to me, well, she has a problem. Somebody compiled all her photographs, and the person now contact her and saying certain lewd things to her. So I said, well, why did you put up these photographs online in the first place? The reason you put it up is for people to view it and like it. Yeah. So we ought to be careful on what we put up online, because people can use it and draw conclusions. And what they want to hit is on the financial side. So you have this group of guys who might be anywhere in the world, or group of girls anywhere in the world. I don't want to be sexist now. And if they make requests from 100 people and 50 people respond with 600 US, you know what happens? They get paid for several years.
Yes. Perfect.
So for you is one, but for them, several.
But there's also the other scam that I know for a fact one or two people on island have been affected by, where they are sent messages. In the case of men, they send messages by a female who starts this online romantic relationship with them, would send nude photos to them and say, well, send to me too.
Yeah.
And then they take out nude photos and send to them.
They get caught.
Then immediately they close that account, they open a next one, and they say, okay, we have you now.
Blackmail.
We have your photos, and we are going to post your photos to all of your friends if you don't send 500 US dollars. Or you don't send 600 US dollars.
This is happening right now.
And there are men that have been caught with that here, because they asked me for help to try and trace who it is, do that to them.
And then you have situations where they attack college students, people who finished college, who wants to go to university, and say, look, we have this. You get you a school, They send a beautiful picture of the university and the prospectus and so on, but you have to send monies. You know, it's a scholarship, but you have to send for administrative costs. So somebody who is looking for an opportunity to study could really be caught, right, in that kind of way. Or there's a job on ships. You got a cruise ship, and right. So all you have to do.
The Canadian, there's this
Right.
one that keeps coming up with Canada.
Right.
And every time I see it, I keep posting on that fake, scam. They keep removing it, but I keep putting it
I
underneath.
mean, we're supposed to be able to communicate quicker these days. Call somebody, call the Ministry of Tourism. Even if you don't get you the first time, call somebody and say, look, I'm seeing this thing, is this thing so? And very quickly you get a response. So people who are genuine looking for jobs and betterment and so on, they are also approached. Our information is everywhere. People use different things you say, all the smiley face and emojis you put up, they draw conclusions from that, what you might be looking for. Somebody might say, I'm bored, I'm home, I'm educated, no job. Well, who? But somebody know you want to go to a university, you're looking for a job. So we have to be careful how we manage the footprints we put up online. And so we become targets just by innocently saying, well, I'm depressed today, she left me, for example. Well, you know that one time somebody thinking, ching money. You're not thinking relationship now.
Let me ask a corresponding banking question then. Have we found instances of the scamsters being people here in Grenada that have been using social media and other means to con fellow Grenadians?
Right. So
we found
we have not
instances of
found
that?
them as the main culprit, but we had several instances where persons locally have been enticed to get involved in the scam. So we've charged persons who were enticed, get involved. Maybe they were collecting monies from Western Union and MoneyGram or whoever the money remitter is, and giving it and saying it off to these people, knowing fully well that they were part of a scam.
So there have been persons charged here in Grenada?
Yeah, man, yeah.
We
Because
don't hear about that one.
because what you might find happen if they engage me and they use me as a point person, at some point I realize something is going on. My role is to get several other persons to collect monies from these people. So we had a situation a few years ago where there were persons who were scamming elderly people from North America. And they had this guy here, a local guy, who recruited about 5-6 different people, and they were going and collect monies from the remitters. And they had somebody stationed here who were collecting those monies and sending it back out. Well, luckily, we managed to charge 2 people. We got some monies, and we also charged a local. So very much so, man.
Can these persons be extradited to the United States for being involved in financial crime?
Well, I wish, but there was no request, so we deal with them here at all.
No, but while there's no request, legally they can. If they,
they
because
can. If
there was
the
some
US,
from Jamaica.
If the US has interest and gets involved, then yes, they can. They can.
So you could find yourself, if you're involved in that right now, you could find yourself in a US jail.
So it's important to say that sometimes we found that persons are genuinely used and they don't even know. Right? So these persons who allow their account to be used to facilitate a transfer, they're really innocent. They go say, okay, well, take $100 as you pay and send out the 20,000 for us. Well, crazy. If I'm working for you, I must get more than that. But the point is, they really believe that they're doing something legit. So these are the persons who are most concerned about. When you look at them, they're not involved in the crime, but they've just been used. So people have to be careful. I think we need to educate ourselves. And talk about that some more instead of all the other rubbish we talk online, and see if we can.
Superintendent, that was my question come in. What are some of the things that the RGPF is putting in place to sensitize, educate the Grenadian public about these scams?
Excellent. Well, this program is doing just that. We have a website. The FIU has a website, www.grenadafio.com. We have certain issues that we put up. We also do advisories, although not public, to institutions. If you see a trend, for example, one of the responsibilities of the FIU is to give trends to the institutions. So we see a certain trend and we see something like what is happening on the internet, we would share and say, look out for that. So we do that. I think what we can do more of is to be more public about these issues, to get some public consumption of the issues and people are better educated.
Superintendent Pierre, we're quickly running out of time. I haven't been able to take calls today because I think this information needs to get out, and I don't want to get off of it at all. We are quickly heading into the carnival season.
Right.
Carnival is coming up, and we know during this time is the point in time when a lot of people pass counterfeit money. They pass it, they run to the bar and they pass 100, and they're doing like they have drunk, and they say, pass a thing there and something, they get the change, and they go on, and then they pass another 100 and so on. And especially, I think this year we have to be on alert even more than ever, because now all the counterfeit money they have to get rid of it, because we have the new ones coming in, the $50 and the 100 and so on. So they need to get rid of all the counterfeit they have, mainly the 100s, 50s, 20s. They don't really do 5s and 10. They ain't going down there.
Too small.
With that, too small. So 20s, 50s, 100s, they need to get rid of that. How can the average person identify, look for, and any advice there to some of the small, because some of the small business people, they get hit hard with this. Sometimes they think they make our money, and by the time they reach by the bank, you realize a grand gone down the drain. And when you think that's a grand that you're bringing, you ain't counting all the change that you give that the person gone with as well, and the goods that you lose for the fake money. How can the average vendor, the camida in the terminal or the bus driver that bringing down people from St. Patrick, how can they guard against this?
But I think we're back again on the issue of education. People need to educate themselves. So now we see some counterfeit bills that they don't look well. And when you watch it, you know it's obviously not, right? So I think what we need to do, we see a lot of $50, very prevalent, 50s and 100s. So what you need to do is to have a genuine bill as a comparison. So your operation might be slow, but better you slow down your operation than you get hit with counterfeit. And, during the parading time and during the jab time, you see how the counterfeit with tire on it. People pass it quick, and small business owners so happy for the sale, they take it. So you have to maybe we need to add an additional person in your bar, and if you have questions about a particular bill, offer it up. Normally when you put them together with a genuine bill, it's always a little smaller or a little bigger. You don't seem to get the dimensions right at all, right? And there are some other intricate features. But looking at the color schemes and so on, are simple things you can do. For the US dollar, don't quote me on it, but on the quote of the figure on the US dollar, if you push against it with your thumb, you're supposed to feel a sort of fist scale feeling. Kind of rough, right? The counterfeiters don't seem to be able to get that right, and me saying it public won't help them. But the point is, we want people to be more astute, particularly small business owners, because what they try to do, they try to bring it into the banking system, and once you reach to the bank in your night safe bag, you would get caught. Because when the business owner gets it, he or she feels, well, let me try a thing. It never works.
What should they... Okay, I'm selling. Let's say I'm on Kirani James Boulevard, Jupe morning. I'm selling. Somebody passed me a counterfeit. I recognize that it's counterfeit. I'm still seeing the person. Call the police one time. Hey, that man
call the police
counterfeit.
one time, and if you can keep it, keep it. But you don't want to. I don't want to encourage fights now. So call the police.
Don't go and try and string them in the neck and say, hey, what are you trying with me?
You don't want to do that to cause fights. But I think what we want more and more to do is people listen. There are persons who are aware of persons who are circulating counterfeit and they're not speaking up. Speak up. Right? Because if one name surfaces 3-4 times, you know that person is onto something. And I think the police will do the best. Currently there are ongoing investigations and so on that are taking place, and I wish we would have some kind of success. But I think just having an educated population would help. Years ago I visited a certain Caribbean country, and they just used to give you back and say, this one not good. Give me the next one. They got so comfortable with it now. When they get it, they just give you back and say, give me the next one. It wasn't a big issue. That is where I want us to reach. But people are still getting caught, and it's too obvious. So slow down the operations. Don't let the mass trick you.
Especially between now and Christmas.
And Christmas.
Yes,
because they're going to try to dump all that counterfeit in the next 6 weeks.
Before
They're going to try to dump every counterfeit 50 and 100 that they have in their arsenal. And the 20s, they had to get rid of it. And what they don't get rid of there, they're going to try to dump when it comes closer to Christmas, and everybody, they're going to try to dump that on you. And if you're caught with it, you can be charged.
Well,
even if you're the vendor that you receive it and you're caught with it, if you know
knowledge, knowledge is counterfeit. So
you have to be extremely careful right now. What about posting lists are the ones that, because I've seen a list come out recently of all the counter
we
fees.
posted a list recently with the numbers, but I mean, they get creative, they change numbers every
yeah.
time. But that's just a matter of keeping the public sensitized.
What about posting those notices in a place like the bus terminals and so? Because you just put it on the pole, the people who are selling on the terminal, the bus drivers, who tend to be some that get the money,
Right.
because it's nighttime, you're driving bus, somebody pass a 50 for you to pass 100, and you just give them the change. And you go on, you ain't feeling, you ain't checking to see.
Yeah, it's a good idea. It's a good idea.
What about post? Yeah,
It's a
post
good
them in the
idea.
bus, and even get some of the bus drivers to keep a list of them on the buses
On the bus.
itself, so
You're
they
right,
become
you're right,
familiar with it.
Yeah.
I mean, if
The
people are
terminal.
more sensitized and more public about it, the perpetrators would
The supermarkets
more
again.
difficult.
Even the schools.
The supermarkets, the schools, the children, they might get the children 100 and say,
Yes.
go and buy some sweetie, because somebody getting it from a child
Yeah.
mightn't be so
It's easy,
suspicious.
it's easy.
So, any other information you want to give to the general public as we nearly out of time?
Right, but just to say that I want to thank you for having me and for having the FIU, and we should come back sometime. We have a lot of things to talk about.
Yes.
I think we want to get in that drive where we engage the public some more as to what we do and how what we do fit into the larger financial landscape. So thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
We also need the churches to know, listen, you don't need to pay 300 and something. It's just 100.
Just
You can
100.
go to, what's the website again? They can go to and download the form.
www.amlcommission.gd. And it's not a church, it's a non-profit.
Non-profit
Let's stop saying
organizations.
churches.
Yeah.
Say non-profit
Non-profit organization.